All right, Kiss Army, welcome to the KissFAQ Podcast. Thank you for giving us your time today and letting us into your head. I hope we don't do any damage. This is a Kiss-related podcast by the board for the board. We hope that you enjoy. All right, so welcome to the KissFAQ Podcast. We've got a guest today, and it is Big John Harte. Welcome to the show, sir.
Hey, thank you. Welcome to everybody who's listening.
So
Great.
For anyone who is not aware, Big John has a book coming out soon. And right at the top, let's just tell you where you can go to find out some more details. Go to pledgemusic.com/Big John Harte. And John, tell me a little bit about how you came to decide that the time was right for you to tell your story.
Well, I got pushed into it, actually, for over a number of years. A good friend of mine who is now my business partner, Steve Waldman, we've hung around together for eons. And I've known him since I worked in our Maiden Days. He was there for that. We worked together on some projects. And, we'd sit around afterwards, maybe drink a beer. And, that causes loose lips, and I'd be telling stories. And he says, you really got to write a book. And I thought, yeah, blow him off. And he persists, and then it got to be where I was making excuses. I'm going, I don't have the time. I'm working. I'm doing this and doing that. But I've been ill twice. I had cancer, and then back in 2000, I had the cancer. And in 2015, I had open heart surgery. So when I got finished with the open heart surgery, my cardiac doctor said, you can't go back to work. That ain't going to happen. Not at that capacity anyway. So Steve comes to me and says, well, now you have no more excuses. We're going to write the book. So he kept talking to me, and I finally conceded. And we've been working at it ever since. And I'm self-publishing, so it's a process that we had to learn about because we didn't know nothing about books. And people say, well, I'll go to a Simon & Schuster, a big publisher type. And we found that they really don't know or care who I am. Don't know anything about the fan base, because we would discuss that a little bit. And then, I've heard stories from other people who have went with them in books, and they said, well, they're going to do an in-store signing somewhere outside of a regular bookstore, and they had to buy back their own books and things like that. So I just said, nah, I don't want to go down there. Plus, you lose control, which is the important thing. They give you a check, you accept it, then you accept the fact that they now own you. And they're going to write the book their way, whether they understand the subject matter or not. So that was another reason why I said, no, we got to self-publish. So we were in the process of learning all about that. We honestly thought we would get it done faster, because we really started pursuing it in 2017. So we thought, yeah, by now we have the book done. But that's just not the case. There's so many things that we're doing to make it interesting for the fans. I'm going to people, because I've had people express their desire to be a part of the book. Like past people that were opening acts, people are these are all big people in the business. People that were just big Kiss fans. They've approached me and said, hey, I remember a story about you, or I want to talk a little bit about you. So we've been garnishing that stuff too, and hopefully that'll make it interesting for the readers as well. What did Robin Sanders have to say about John Harte? Because they were an opening act for quite a while.
Exactly. Now, I saw you at the Atlanta Kiss Expo last month, and I'm wondering.
I remembered your name, and I couldn't put a face to it. Now I got a face for it.
Yeah, you don't want to see my face.
I did once, so.
You survived. So
yep.
I'm wondering, you've done a few Expo appearances. What are the fans kind of asking you, or telling you that they really want you to talk about in your book? And obviously, we're not going to talk about the actual stories as such today, right, because we want people to buy the book.
The most frequently asked question is, what was it like being on the road with Kiss? And from letting them speak about it, or their concepts, they seem to think that, especially in my capacity, that all I did was hang out with the band and we partied all the time. And that's just not the case at all. It'll be described in the book various things about what other duties I had, other than, keeping them safe as possible. There was things I had to do with the concert halls, hotels, local police departments, all those types of things, logistics, all had to be thought out or handled by me and or my security team. So, in the beginning it was Rick Stewart and myself, and he was the lead, and I learned a lot from Rick about moving these guys around, and we had to take into consideration of the makeup and the anonymity part, which from everybody else really didn't exist. They wanted to be seen, star-wise. With these fellas, it was just the opposite. Not that they didn't want to be seen; they would have loved it, but they couldn't. That was part of the thing we had to cover up. So, it was, it's a lot more than just hanging out with the band. Plus, people think that, was I a fan and or a friend? We became friends, and I wasn't a fan in the beginning. To me, it's a job. That's what I was hired to do, and I tried to do it to the best of my abilities. And I think because of my outlook on that, that's why I was around so long. Because I, as much as we were the same age, we enjoyed a lot of the same interests. We come from similar backgrounds as far as, where we grew up and stuff. But, I tried to maintain that line of, as much as we're friendly, they're still my boss.
Exactly. That was one of the things that I find very interesting. I want to learn about you is, what is it in your background that made you go into this career, this line of work? I mean, it's not something that, my son sits around telling me, I want to work in security,
Right.
for bands. How did you actually end up, and where was your background? You say it's a similar background to the guys in KISS in particular, but
Well,
you've worked with a lot of people.
I was in a garage band for a while after high school, and but so was about 900 other kids in my neighborhood, because that was the thing back then. I mean, there was no distractions like video games. There were no distractions of the internet, the computer. None of that was happening yet. This is 1974, 73, 72, and everything. The emphasis for most people around the country was music. Who was playing where, new bands coming up. They got a lot of exposure because the record companies were throwing money behind all of these bands in artist development. So, I happen to live in the New York area, so we would go, into New York City on the weekend, and, we'd buy a Village Voice or whatever before we got there. You could see there'd be 7, 8, 9, 10 different places to go to see live music, and they weren't, the biggest place at the time that was being used frequently was the Village, Bill Graham's place, Fillmore East. And that was the biggest capacity one, which was only about 2,500 seats, if I'm correct. It might even be a little smaller. But all the other places, the Village Vanguard and Bottom Line was 1,000 tops. So there were much more intimate settings. And, after the weekend, you get back with some of your other friends and you discuss, in great detail who you've seen and whether you enjoyed them or you didn't or found, their look fascinating. Everything was very important at that time about music. That's it. Now, it kind of reminds me of KISS fans and Iron Maiden fans because they are really so riveted on the band and what goes on with them. But that's the way we were about all the bands. We weren't as precise, but we were interested in the musical scene.
So what were some
So
of the
from that point, what's that?
I'm sorry. I was going to say, what were some of the bands that were part of that musical scene that you were into, at that age?
Oh, I remember I was at the Fillmore East in New York in '71. The Allman Brothers recorded playing the live album, which was just to be a part of that. The bands that were just coming up from the Bay Area, you got Grateful Dead. You have Janis, Joplin. Jefferson Airplane. All those were new bands then. So when they go over to the East Coast, that was a big deal for us to experience that live, not just on FM radio, which was called underground radio or pirate radio at the time. They weren't considered real radio stations.
So you kind of moved out from, you mentioned that you've done the garage bands, the music scene that you're a part
Yeah,
of.
but at that point, I got off point there a little bit. But after the band, things happened. A couple of guys in the band were going on to college. Everything sort of fell by the wayside. And myself, I said, well, there's so many people doing this. Maybe I can work for the bands. And I didn't understand how yet or where. So the first thing I did was get myself, I started going to see more shows. And I was on a ticket line, and I got somebody approached me to work the venue. And I said, okay. So from that point, I was working rock and roll shows, 2 different places. And then that led to even more places because there was not a small group, but a nucleus of people that would do, were considered valuable enough to all these other promoters to go ahead and come down for the shows, and they would get hired wherever the shows may be. As far as Boston, we'd go up to Boston, we'd go into Philly, we knew all the promoters, Connecticut, Rhode Island. So we kept working at this, but we based ourselves out of New Jersey and New York. So we did the Capitol Theater and Roosevelt Stadium, and by that time Bill Grant's place was closed, but we did the Academy of Music, which was Howard Stein's, and the Beacon Theater, which I think was Ron Delsner's then. So we could keep busy. So everybody was making a living off of this. But through that, you got to meet people, and I got to see people. And because of my position, which was just an usher security guy, if there was additional work to be had, like being a stagehand or running a spotlight. So I learned all those things. I wanted to learn as much about what this business entails. And from doing all that, you got to meet the people who were calling shots or who would be involved in hiring. Back then, it was more of who you knew rather than what you knew, because they needed so many people. And then from that point, the fellow that had hired me for Roosevelt Stadium and the Capitol Theater, his name was Rick Stewart. He went out to work for KISS. He called me about 6 months afterwards or so and asked me if I still expressed a desire to go on the road, and I said, yeah. So he said, well, we may have an opening here. The band's playing somewhere near where I was, or one of the places that I worked. He said, so let's get together after the show. You can meet the band, and we'll go from there. And originally I was hired just to do Europe, but they brought me on right at the end of '75, and I worked on all the shows preceding the trip to Europe, and then of course Europe. And then I thought I was going to, be done working for them. And they called me back. Paul Coyne called me and said, "No, you're here, so we need to see you, in a week's time, and we want to discuss what's going on next." So I got into a job from which was only supposed to be a couple of months to about 8-9 years.
What was your first impression then when you go into an interview? Rick calls you up and said, "Hey, you still want to go on the road." That suggested to me that this was really your first, traveling employment gig with a band. Would that be correct?
Yeah, it was. I mean, I had worked previously with the Allman Brothers personally for them. Their road manager hired me, John Scooter Herring, and he said, whenever we're in someplace you can get to distance-wise, he said, you come, you work the show, I want you there. So that was under my own power, though, to get there. With this, it was actually going on the road and being a part of the whole machine. And I was quite intrigued with that. I wanted to be a part of that. As far as the interview, it was very loose. It was I was introduced to the band by Rick, and the fellow, the road manager at the time, was J.R. Smalling. And I had known him a little bit previously. Didn't know a big deal about him, but I knew who he was, and he knew who I was. So that made it easier that way. So it was basically the band, I fielded some questions for them, and they asked me what I thought, what I was, they were a little concerned maybe without coming right out to say, like, well, do you get it, or are you on our side, more or less? Because so many people back then dismissed them as, they're not going to be here. They're going to be here today, they'll be gone tomorrow. But that wasn't my decision, as I told you, with the way I conducted myself or tried to. I wasn't going to make a decision on them. They're offering me a job, I'm going to the job. you know, without saying so, I said, yeah, I'm in, you know, let's go. So, you know, that worked for them, I guess. And then as they got to know me and I them, they've seen, you know, where my thinking was. I wasn't there to be a Klingon or, you know, hanging around and just like feeding off of them. I was there to provide them the services they asked me to. So I think that's what worked for me and them.
Now, I guess you're not going to mind whether you like the music as long as the money is green, right? But
For
did
the
you?
most part, yeah. But see, in all honesty, if I didn't like them as people, then I wouldn't have stayed. I got to say that because, you know, I can, when you go on the road or when you go to work for somebody, you can tolerate a lot of things for the love of money. But certain things you can't. So I had to really feel that whatever I was doing for these guys was maybe at least appreciated. Didn't have to say so. I would just have to feel that. And I got that right away. They were into it. I was into them as far as providing the service, the music. My musical appreciation came later for them once I actually started to see what all was entailed. But in the beginning, it was just music. It was a different style than I would listen to, realistically. But that didn't make it wrong or didn't make it not good. And that was my outlook then, and it is today about things.
So what then was your first impression when you saw Kiss in concert? I mean, a little bit different than, shall we say, the San Francisco bands at the Fillmore East.
Oh, for sure. I mean, it was definitely different. It was loud. It was theatrical, you know, and I mean, you couldn't help it but not have a good time. Even when I worked the show before I worked for them, because I had seen them previous, a couple of venues that I worked, and they, the people that come to see them, even back then, they left feeling they were definitely entertained. They had a great time, and that said something. Whereas a lot of people, they go to a show and they walk out shaking their heads going, that was terrible, and you have all the neophiles are going, well, the sound was a little off and this and that, as if they know anything about anything. Most of the time there's no shit and shine all up, but they would definitely give their opinion about something you know nothing about. It's so annoying. But no, the band, I look at everything as in the entertainment area as if it's new to me, it's new to me, and if it's really, really off-putting, I say so. But they didn't put me off. I just said, well, this is different. I'm not sure what it's all about, but it's interesting.
So let's go to your book for a second, because that's a great background for people who are interested in reading about more about you and your stories. In your book, will you be covering your background and how you entered into this? Just like you just told us, a summary of.
All of that's going to be in there because I think the book is about me. It's not necessarily about this or Iron Maiden or Billy Idol or Prince, or the Allman Brothers, I even did a lot of shows with the Grateful Dead when I was when I was working in the concert scene, because they were there and they'd play so much, we'd be working there with us. You got to know some of the people, and because back then it was a little more, like I said, intimate. So you've seen people, you've seen them 3 or 4 times, you know their name, they know yours, you say hello or whatever. Not like today where it's just like a big machine, you roll through town and you're out the door. Which I think is sad in a way because of what it was then and what it's become industry-wise. I think some of the people of today really miss out on some of the cool things that would happen back then when I was starting to get into the business. You had jam sessions with bands that you never thought possible, and you would see them. They would just show up at other venues. I remember at the Fillmore East, the Grateful Dead was playing, and the Beach Boys showed up, and they did a rendition of Help Me Rhonda, all of them. I mean, it's just, those type of those spontaneous things just don't happen today.
No, they don't. So, it was very much more organic time where musicians were actually, in most cases, very skilled musicians. But,
Oh, for sure.
one of the things that was really a big part of the scene, and it affected some of the members in Kiss, was the drugs around the band. I mean, how was that kind of to deal with in your career? Was that
Well,
a tricky part?
tricky in certain ways because, there was no angels out there on the road. We were all guilty of indulging in certain pleasures, myself included. However, we would have to keep ourselves in check because we got to function. So, the drugs at the time were more the crutch for us to go, okay, we got to wake up or we got to get moving. And with, of course, the band fellows that partook of such activity, they were more, well, I'm going to have a good time and, balls to the walls. We're going after it. So it was a problem, but then again, it wasn't because this was the 70s, and it was everywhere. It was prevalent within the industry. Like it wasn't an unknown or an unsaid thing. Everybody knew about it. Everybody did it. I mean, from record execs all the way down to the people working the venues. It was everywhere. And some of the fans, they would use that to try to meet the band. Hey, here's some blow. Here's some weed. So all of that, it was everywhere. You just had to be careful who you were dealing with, or you wind up in jail. But we tried to keep certain things away from the band, especially on days or nights when we know, hey, they got to pull the jets for a while. So hopefully we'd be in a city that wasn't so populated with people like that, and we'd catch a break for everybody.
Which one of the members in KISS did you interact with the most during your time with the band?
That's hard for me to say because when I originally started, there was only myself and Rich Stewart. So we used to split it up 2 and 2. Most of the time, back then, if they were to go out, they would go out pretty much en masse. They'd go to the same place, they'd spend about the same amount of time, and then leave. Because the first tours I did with them, these were 6-7 nights a week playing. And on the odd day that we would get off, they'd go to the studios and stay. They were always writing for the next album, putting stuff together. So there wasn't a lot of free time. And then, so I got to interact with all of them at various times, one more than the other. But, I worked pretty closely with all of them. And, if something was going on and they wanted to know about something or needed to tell me something, they would tell me, rather than some of the other fellows on the security team. I was their go-to guy because I had been around so long. And I got to know them individually, their personal lives somewhat. So I understood each one to a point, let me say. You never understand anybody fully, but, I would, me and Gene were running together for a while, and myself and Paul, and then Ace for a while, and then Peter. And it all depends on what was happening during the week, during the days. If we were home, who was going out, who wasn't. Because I was a 24/7 fella. When we were in New York, when we were home, off the road, if they were doing stuff, I got called up to go out with them. So, I was constantly, most of the time, I was living in New York. And I was originally from Jersey. So they put me up in a hotel. And there was stuff going on, whether it would be recording and so forth. I'd be a part of all of that. So you got to spend time with everybody on an almost individual basis. While somebody is in the studio laying down a track, the other fellows are sitting out in the lounge. So you got to interact with them pretty much.
So J.R. Smalling obviously ended up on some of the recordings. Were you ever tasked to get instruments or run any errands that affected them in the studio? Are you a mystery background vocalist on any demos or anything? Or
No. My only claim to fame is I did hand claps on New York Groove with about 12 or 13 other people. But that was my only participation with that type of stuff. I was at the studio whenever they were recording, when I worked for them, and I became the caterer, I became everything, but I wasn't involved in the music. And they didn't seek my opinion. I was highly upset.
Of course not. But was that difficult for you? You know, this is your job, number one. You come home, you're off the road, and to get the call to hang out, was it something that you enjoyed doing, or did it not provide you
Well,
separation from your
in the
job?
beginning, in the beginning, it's what I aspired to. I wanted, so it didn't sway me. I mean, I got married in '78, and my wife understood, and she still understands. If I was to do it again, that work is work, and wasn't too worried about any of the other things because the money was always good. So she reaped that benefit from it. And once I got married, though, I try to be home and work out of my house more than living in a hotel in New York. So, but if I did have to do that for a week or so, she'd come over and hang out. So it wasn't bad. From my end, I always tried to make it work for me as well. Yeah, I didn't want it to become a problem, and it shouldn't. The things I did for the band, logistically, that's you have to sit down and figure stuff out, and then hopefully when you put it into action, it works the way you planned. So the same thing applied to my personal life. Well, if I'm going to be here, if I'm going to be here, I wouldn't let my wife come out to California a few times when we were here, because we would stay in LA, usually extended for a week or so when we were on tour. So I got to reap those benefits as well, and everything was pretty good. I mean, it is what you make it. I found. I mean, there was people on the road that absolutely hated being on the road. They didn't like the travel aspect. They didn't like living out of a suitcase. They didn't like you got shoddy meals in the very beginning. Different money. And what I did find, anybody who was half-assed about it, like, well, today they like it and tomorrow they hate it. They didn't.
You're famous. I mean, you're a legend in Kiss photographs, aren't you? For having your hand up to protect the identities of the members of Kiss. How often did you actually have to do that? Was that a common thing, or is that really one of those moments that's just a bit of a metaphor for trying to keep them protected in the '70s?
Well, that was a stage shot, obviously, one with me and my hand over Paul's face. However, more often than not, the reality of that is we had to think about things. I've seen somebody sent me some YouTube footage of us coming out of the recording studio, I think, the record plant, I think it was. And I was there, and I had, from my vantage point, I seen those people outside with cameras. So I had to clue the band in, hey, it's time to cover up. So obviously, the stage shot I couldn't do all the time because it wouldn't work. But I have to make sure they were covered, and I hustled them to the car so we'd have some kind of peace of mind. And at that time, the paparazzi were not as vicious as they are today, I must say that. They would at least mostly get out of your way, and they were more focused on trying to get the shot that they could sell. And we understood that, but they also understood us, and that's why there was that shot in People magazine, and there's a couple of more running around, one from Studio 54 with me and Ace, and things like that would happen because we would give, they'd be there, and I'd get the band in, or the band, which band members went at a particular time, and they would come up to me, the paparazzi, and say, look, you got to have something. So I would talk to the band member and say, let's do this, and we'll give them something that they can run with to whoever they want to sell it to, and we'll be happy and that leave us alone for the rest of the night. So we would do those stage shots. And it wasn't often, but it was often enough so everybody sort of got along together. I was known to throw jackets over people's heads going into places where there was just no way for them to cover up. I did. I think it was after the show in New York when first Eric did, but I'm not positive it's this party. But there was a party we were going to after the show, and Ace and his wife were in the car with me, out of the car, and sport car over said, I'll guide you. And I had one of the other security guys that had come, I raided him to come out and help Jeanette. We didn't care if Jeanette got photographed. We didn't want Ace to get photographed. So the other fellow took Jeanette and off we went. So like I said earlier, a lot of my job was logistics, thinking about, well, let's see, What's this scenario? What's that scenario? Movement, getting them in and out of hotels, in and out of venues, in and out of the movie theater, in and out of the bowling alley. We do all of those things. We tried to maintain a certain amount of quote-unquote normalcy to the whole aspect. These are what people did back then. We would go bowling, we'd go shoot pool, and, we had the advantage of the fact that we had no cell phones back then. So if we got someplace, we usually would go scout it out or use people from the town that we were dealing with promoter-wise and say, where's a place we could go do this that's not real popular? And depending on the day of the week that we would get the information, we'd go check it out. So, yeah, we can get away with that for an hour or so. And, we'd go and shoot pool or we'd go bowling. And then, by the time the word got out on the street, people started to show up, we were getting the hell out of there. So same thing with the movie theater. I learned from the Elvis bunch and reading about him, they would go and buy the whole theater. Well, we didn't need to do that. We modified it to, I would send one person to the theater, buy the tickets for the show we were going to, and check on the time to make sure it's running per time. We'd show up, we'd walk in the door, we had the ticket taker had the tickets, we'd go right on in, sit down, it was dark, nobody knew they were there. When the credits started to roll, we walked out the door, back in the car and left. And most of the time, nobody even knew we were there.
Oh, that's great. That's the way to do it. That's without having to pay for the whole darn place. That's excellent.
But again, that it's not something that I knew. It was something we thought about. How can we do this and make it? And again, I was always looking for the aspect of ease. I want to make it easy on the band. I want to make it easy on me, because a lot of people also have the preconceived notion that we beat people up all the time. You don't have time for that. I'd be more than happy to partake of that stuff, but it would do. The band ain't going to jump in and help me. It's you got to keep moving. So you devise methods and ways, and going through the airports with a couple of us. One guy was the baggage guy at that point. He was also assigned to one of the band members, but his job at the airport was to get the luggage and bring it to the hotel. So he would be sort of off to the side, but he'd be looking down the car. If he'd seen somebody with a camera who was sort of expecting the band to be there, he'd walk down and right in front of them. So they, there was no contact, but they couldn't see the band. They couldn't get their shot off. And we moved the band fairly quickly through those situations, because you didn't have to stop for anything back then. You're leaving the airport. Nobody was in your way. We walked right out the door, got in the cars, and left. And sometimes you'd spend a few time, talking to people, and either a warning or something like that. We'd have to get creative with what we were saying. We'd come up with all kinds of new laws and all this kind of stuff. Just so if I'm standing in front of you and you're thinking about what I'm saying before you act, then you're not acting. So by the time you think about it and digest everything I just said to you, the band's already had a shot. They're in the cars. And that's, things that we would do.
So part of your job was, confiscating cameras, wasn't it, from people who got too close? And
well, it was. We didn't really want the camera. We just wanted the film. And there wasn't that many. There was enough. Trust me. That's why people know about it. But we tried to be, we'd tell you first if we seen it. Don't take the camera. Don't take the picture. Just don't do that. And of course, some of them would, and then we got to go over there and address the problem. I just hate when they ran, but we don't have to chase them. But normally, we would confront them, say, "Look, got to have the film," and they all come up with cockamamie excuses. Oh well, my kid's birthday is on there, so well, they shouldn't use their roll of film. And if it really got to the point where they weren't having it, then I'd use my famous line. There's two ways this is going to go. That's your camera, and it looks like a lovely camera, but I'm getting that film. So either you're going to give it to me, or I'm going to reach over and take your camera and take it out. But I'm not very technically motivated here. So that camera may not come back in the same shape as it is around your neck right now. And that usually got them to think of it and go, okay, yeah, give them the film. Leave them alone. They'd be angry, but that would pretty much be the end of it.
What did you guys do with the film? Did you ever get it developed just to see what else was on it?
Right in front of them. we destroy it right there. We just rip it out, expose it, And say, there it is. Because somebody once said to me, "You're going to take that and sell it." I said, "To who?" And I ripped, as I was taking the film out of the canister, I said, "This isn't going to be sold to anybody. That's not what I'm here for." And I gave him back the camera. I mean, the roll of film hanging, dangling out. I said, "You can have that now." So I can't sell it. And walked away. But people had all these like that, preconceived notion of what we would do with certain things or how we would do it. And we tried not to get confrontational, or where you're just pushing and shoving or punching. It happened occasionally, but we tried not to instigate that. We tried to give them their choices. And back then, remember, the attitude was a little more loose. It wasn't like today where there's lawsuits on everybody's lips. So, most people, if they wanted to stand up instead of stand down, they were willing to, and they knew what it would be about. Today, everybody just wants you to breathe on them, and they can sue you.
Absolutely. Talking about confiscating things, part of the concert scene in the 70s saw a rise in the use of Super 8 video cameras, and
Right.
Obviously bootlegging of concerts. Did that come into your
Right.
job purview about trying to protect the band in that sense, or were you only really
Yes.
interested in photographs?
No. We tried to cover all aspects. Some places we were more successful than others. We didn't have any real technician geeks on my security team, so we weren't up with all the latest stuff that was out there, and everybody got creative. And I had seen that when I was around in Grateful Dead. They didn't care if you recorded their concerts, but you've seen how these kids were developing all of this stuff and the things that they would use and how they would use them. So we would try to do our best with the security team and the local security teams to address those problems. The cameras were a little easier because, first of all, I had to get them in. There was a no camera policy. So usually, unless you were really brazen, you'd have a little Instamatic camera, which for those people who don't know what they were, it was a box that looked like a camera. It was small, and the distance on it wasn't very good. So if you're like 5 rows back, you're going to get a blur. But they'd still try. And we sometimes we'd catch them, sometimes we wouldn't. But those type of things were never really good to anybody, but maybe the fans who would say, "Yeah, see, I was there." But with the bigger cameras, people at that time, what we would do if they were legitimate, they would be escorted into the front area, in the pit, as we called it, and they would be allowed to shoot a certain amount of shows, a certain amount of the show. Usually the first or second song, and then they're on their way. And we would have the local security team escort them all the way out of the building.
Oh, that's
given the option, if they would like to see the rest of the show, they're more than happy to deposit their equipment. If they didn't have a vehicle, they could turn it into the box office and get a ticket on it, or go back and put it in your vehicle, lock it up, and come back and enjoy the show. But you're not staying in here with that camera. And, I have to say that 95% of the time we were good with that. We were successful. I'm sure through all the shows that I've done, we're operating under those situations, that people, got away with a few things. But, again, they were never going to be really, really good quality or very exceptional, or it would be. And the biggest thing was them without the makeup. As long as I could keep that part, I was happy. The recording thing, yes and no. Some people were successful with it, but it wasn't as widespread as it is, or had become, because you didn't have the technologies and there was no place to share it. Now with the internet, you can share it, from here to China and back. So, there's a different motivation behind it, and it's a motivation different from back then. A lot of people were looking to exploit that situation. Oh, I got a recording of the New York Dolls at this place. And, they would sell it to somebody. And it's going to be poor quality. It's not going to be very good. And it's a bad representation of the band. And I think for the most part, that's what the bands would be upset about more than anything else. That, they sound like shit. And yet their name is tagged to it. So, as things progress, it's like the old phone game. You start at one end and get to the other, the message is completely different. Same thing here. Well, 4 or 5 people get a hold of this and listen to it, but by the time it gets to the last person that's listening to it, it sounds absolutely horrible. But who suffers? The band. So I can understand them being upset about that. But, I had bigger problems with fireworks than everything else. People would sneak in, and that's a dangerous situation.
Well, 76, 77, that was the era of the M80, wasn't it? Being chucked up.
Oh, yeah, all that good stuff. And it's unfortunate that people don't think. I understand everybody wants to have a good time. So do I. But I want to keep my eyes and my fingers and everything else. So some of these people were just, I don't know whether they were impaired or they just didn't give a shit or they didn't have any forethought about it, but they were shooting this stuff off, in the middle of the hall. Remember back then, I don't know whether you're old enough, but right into 77, even into 78 a little bit, most of the shows, if they went to an arena, the capacity was like a ballpark. And what they would do on the arena floor, that was what we called festival seating or animal house seating. They'd let as many people down there as they thought possible and take it away with the fire marshal. So that place would be chock-a-block. Your actual seats that were sold were in the proscenium around it. So you'd have, tons of people on the floor. And, if shit happens out there, it could get really dangerous. Because I've seen fights out there where we had to go out and wade into. And I had the barricade come down one time in the city. I had, people with the fireworks have to go out there. And because, it's part of the mixing platform is out there in the middle of all that stuff. So we've got to try to secure that. And, everything developed as time went on. In the beginning, your mixing platform was just on some risers. And then eventually we had to put barricades around the risers. And then we had to refortify that. And we had to put security people out there to keep the people from climbing over the barricades. And if there was video towers or light towers out there, we had to secure them. Because everybody was, I did a show in Texas with Iron Maiden. We had 2 guys fall through the ceiling. The false ceiling in the back of the arena. They got up on the person's side, the audience side, climbed up the rafters, the iron beams, found the main beam, took that all the way across the arena, came down behind the stage where there was a guard shack and an office and something else. They fell out of here, fell right through the office. People are crazy for whatever reasons. They thought they were going to be able to meet the band, I guess. I don't know what motivated them, but it damn near killed them.
So what I do want to get into, John, and I don't want to take up all of your day with this, because obviously people can find out a lot more about your book at pledgemusic.com, Big John Harte.
Right.
Your time with KISS came to an end, and you went on to work with other bands.
Right.
What was the primary driver for the end of your time working for KISS?
Well, it was contractual. I had the management. Well, Coin was leaving, and Gutman and Marks was taking over, and they were trying to cut corners wherever they thought would be a good idea. The Gutman and Marks management company, they've been used to doing advertising and things like that, so big budget crunching and stuff like that they were used to. They didn't understand the impact to the personnel for a rock band or a touring group. But they said to me, there's going to be no more salaried work. It's, when tour's over, you're over. And then if you're home and we need somebody, we'll give you a call. But no more, you're no more a salaried employee. Oh, as I said earlier, I was married, I had a house, I had responsibilities. I can't live like that. I didn't make that good of money. So I had to look for other things, which I was never crazy about. I didn't like that. And that's why I think my career ended, when it did, because I only lasted then from 83 to 87. And I got tired of hustling the gig because actually also they were becoming smaller slightly at that time. Things were starting to change industry-wise. But that's the reason I left. And I didn't think to come back. I wound up working with Iron Maiden from that point. And they never stopped working. They were always traveling, especially in the English situation, they have a tax structure over there. So as they were starting to become very successful, they're trying to protect their assets. So there was a tax plan they would go on. The first year of it was a 4-year plan. The first year they could only be in England for 3 months. Then the next year was 6. The third year 9, and then the fourth year they could live home all year if they chose to. But they got so used to doing certain things, like they recorded in the Bahamas. They wrote in the Isle of Jersey because it's a tax haven. No taxes on your materials. So I was always busy with them, and that turned out to be a great gig for a while.
And was Baden the band that you went to directly from Kiss, or where does Billy
Yeah.
Idol fit into this and
After
Prince?
that, Billy was after Iron Maiden, and Billy was a personal thing. It wasn't a tour. I got called up by Accordion Management then, and they wanted somebody to go out and sort of babysit Billy to try to get him back on the path of what he was doing. He was out there, and he went out to California to discuss with people, and the manager, Bill Accordion. They were trying to set up things for maybe a movie deal, and he was also supposed to be working on writing for his new album, for the next album. And things just weren't working out that way. It was a dark time for Bill Accordion. He wasn't on the top of his game back then, at that particular time. And Billy was just sort of floundering around out there, making friends with all the wrong people on Hollywood Boulevard and all that kind of thing. And they were all partying on his dime and trashing his hotel room and costing him a lot of money. So they asked me if they thought that I could go out there and try to rectify that. So I'll give it a try. So I did, and after about a month or so, I got Billy to come back to New York. And, he changed his mindset somewhat. He had talked to a few people out there when I was there. I steered him towards to possibly get his creative juices flowing, or at least get him out of the mind block that he was in. And that seemed to be fairly successful. And went back and he produced the album Whiplash Smile. And then I was done with him. I left. That album was done Christmas of '86, and I left him then. I went home. I really didn't look to go out anymore, but somebody called me, asked me to do Prince as a venue security guy. I did that, and that was a short-lived situation. And then when I did the Europe, and I'm going to let this love sexy. I didn't go to Japan because they didn't need me. Because Japan is very efficient at certain things. And I was home, and somehow Kiss got in contact with me, see if I was available, and I went back to work for them. And I did, I think it was a Creatures tour. I did the States, and then I was done. My son was almost going to be 2 years old. I said I need to be home. I have to figure something out here. So I did. I came home and put together a security company with some people that I had made friends with and knew here from doing other type of security work. And I ran a security company for 13 years.
Well, your final work in the industry was during the Crazy Nights tour with Kiss. So that's quite a spectrum that you worked with the band. I mean, through Creatures, through Crazy Nights, through obviously Europe in '76.
Right. Oh, no, I didn't do Europe in '76. 76, yes, I'm sorry. But when I left them in '87, I didn't go back to them until 2003, but it was in a different capacity. I was home, and I had cancer in 2000. So my doctors had advised me not to go back to running a security company because it's liable to kill me. So I always had a driver's license for trucks. So I called up people at Upstation whom I had made known since I worked for KISS the first time. They were actually the lighting company then. They didn't have a trucking department. But they did, and I called them and I said, oh, sure, come on up. So that was in 2003, and I wound up doing Bon Jovi and then KISS. And then I come home again, and I was kind of on the fence about going out again because it just wasn't my cup of tea. But then, also previous to that, I went to South America with Def Leppard. for a 2-week junket. The fellows that were promoting the shows there were out of the States. They knew me. And the fellow that they would normally use from Brazil, his parents or his mom had passed away, so they need somebody for the bigger portion of the tour. They asked me if I was interested. I said yes, and I went down and made some extra money. But then that was pretty much it. Then I got out of it altogether. But when I was running a security company, we did motion picture and television production and festivals. So I never really got away from the industry per se.
No, you just moved into different areas of it.
Different things.
When do you think the book's gonna be ready? Obviously, you're working on.
I'm hoping for now. We're being more realistic about it. We think we should be able to get mid to late summer release, and that's pretty concrete. We're in a lot of different phases with different aspects. We're already contacted book manufacturers, and we did all the pricing, and then now we're in the process of picking, what the book is going to look like as far as the pages and the book cover itself and how it's going to be bound, all those type of things, which we never thought about, but it has to be done because it's all part of the package.
Absolutely, and obviously this is going to be of interest not just only to Kiss fans, but obviously Iron Maiden. You're gonna have stories about your work with all of the other acts, Prince and Billy, and
whatever I think I can give up that's tangible reading. I mean, because of the way where I was position-wise with the other acts, there's not as much meat on the bones there because I was out, like with Prince, I was outside of his inner circle. He had 10 bodyguards, but we would converse every night of the show. When he was leaving the show, he would stop to tell me where we were going to next. And my job then was to get out there, wherever it was, and start clearing that hall, whatever it was, whether it be a club or a small pub type setting, whatever. He just loved to play, that guy. I mean, he was really amazing. And I know at the time, they said he didn't do drugs, and I didn't believe he did. But boy, he had some stamina. He'd play all night, and then he'd go do another show, and it would be much more freelance. He would go into different genres, different songs. I mean, he really was a very talented individual. So I never knew whether he did or didn't do the drug thing. It's unfortunate that took his life, but I just found that ironic that was his demise, because for years, even before I got there, it was like, oh no, it's crazy. Because I had known some other people. I had met the guy Chick, who had worked for him first, and then one of the guys that worked for me, Ross Licata, I know him from the Capitol, and he worked for me with Kiss. He went to work for Prince, and he said, no, he doesn't do anything. And I said, man, I don't know how he stays up. I wish I had his genes. But that's pretty much it. I mean, there's some things I talk about with the venues and the tour when I started, and how I was used in different ways. And with Billy, it's pretty much what I started to tell you. There's more to it, and that will be in there. We did a few shows together, because we wanted to test out some material, and for me it was a good year with him, because I got him to realize his own situation instead of just floundering around depending on perhaps maybe management to make decisions. I said, no, you can make your own decisions, in the right way. You can't just go, well, fuck this, I'm doing it that way. No, they throw an idea at you, you throw another idea back. And because everybody gets caught up in their persona, and then they become sort of afraid to approach the management company or whoever is trying to help you along in a constructive type way. So look, I don't want to do that. I don't think it's the direction I want to go in. I would rather approach this material. So, hopefully, I was a catalyst for some of that.
Absolutely. Ken, before we wrap up, did you have any questions that you wanted to ask Big John before we finish up?
Yeah, well, one other question.
I have to say this. You touched on this before a little bit, how that I am considered a star and so forth by the fans. I got to tell you, all of that adulation just blows me away. I mean, again, I never took for granted my position with KISS or the other bands, but I never would have thought that what had happened then would be so important, say, now. I was welcomed to the KISS cruise this past year, and I was just blown away. The fans on that ship were so polite and so nice to be around, and really had lots of great things to say, not only to me, but I was there with Lydia Chris and Bruce and Bobby Kulick, and we would all get together, to have dinner or so forth, and we would all talk about this, like how crazy this was for us to experience, because we were there in the early days, and if you had said, oh yeah, 40-something years from now you're going to be on cruise ships and all this stuff is going to be important, we would laugh. We would say, nah, it's crazy. And we did used to. This is a true thing. We used to laugh among myself and the band, KISS. Back then, we're going, yeah, I just see you guys being 50-year-old men in tights, and we'd all have a good chuckle out of it. But who knew?
Who knew?
Here we are. Yeah, well, they're all well past 50, because I know I am. We're pretty much the same age. Myself and Paul and Ace are the same age. Gene's a little bit older, and Peter yet again a little bit older than all of us. So we're right in the same bracket, and we used to laugh about that. We're going, because they have a very grueling show, as opposed to, say, a Jackson Browne or even the Allman Brothers. They would come out and they were kind of laid back, and they didn't do a lot of movement. They're just standing there playing, enjoying it. It was great stuff, but differences. KISS, they go out. There's a lot of movement going on. There was a lot, there's a lot of things to go to make a KISS tour or a KISS show, and that's why we used to laugh. We're going, yeah, we'll be rolling you out in wheelchairs, and the tights and the makeup would be like long faces and stuff like that, and we used to laugh like hell. But there it is. It's there. At least they're not, thank God, in the wheelchairs. They're still viable. Most of them, for the most part, are fairly healthy. And, they're still out there doing what they love to do.
Absolutely.
So one more question.
That's what I wanted to say, that the bands that I did work for, all four of them, actually, at that point, the ones that are mentioned, all understood the value of the fan. Even Billy Idol and even Prince. I mean, he knew without a fan base, he probably wouldn't be making it like he was making it. And the other bands, for sure, they understood because of the fact that they weren't given, especially KISS, a lot of credibility in the beginning, well into the beginning. I mean, when they were in 77, still were getting slagged by various publications going, well, they're this or they're that. And they weren't very flattering and gave them no credibility at all. But they've outlasted those publications.
Excellent. John, a question on all your travels with KISS in the past and all the travels overseas and so on. Where did you find the most rabid KISS fans? Where was that?
Well, in the States, the fans are always fairly rabid, but we could deal with them a little better, and they weren't as manic as when we went to Australia. Australia was my closest experience to a Beatlemania type event. It was insane. I don't know whether it's the fact that they're on an island far away from most other things at the time or what, but they were just, it was crazy. When we went to Australia, we stayed in Sydney first, but when we got there was people outside the hotel 24/7 singing KISS songs. They never seemed to go away. I don't know how they ate, but they were there, and there was a lot of them. We were invited to meet the Lord Mayor of Sydney, and we had to go there by armored car. There was no way we could have got limousines in there. There were so many people on the streets. It was that type of mania, and that lasted throughout the entire tour. every city we went to, they were calling in bomb scares to get the band out of the hotel. So hopefully they'd get a glimpse of them. You know, we couldn't go anywhere. The promoter was wonderful. He would do his due diligence and try to find us a place to go and unwind after the show or on the day off. And if he couldn't, then we had a wet bar and food in one of the ballrooms in the hotel we were staying at, just so we'd be able to break up the monotony of just living in this bubble world almost. And in Sydney, it was crazy. When we first got there, not long after we got there, Black Sabbath came in, staying at the same hotel, and then Elton John. So it was a zoo with attention on that hotel. But they were the craziest. But they were also nice. I mean, I remember meeting people on the street, or I mean, I was loading up a woman, came up to the gate there and said, "Here, come here. I want your autograph." She called me John. I couldn't figure out how she knew that. And I said, "Look, I'm not the band." She said, "No, please come here." So I went over, and she had the newspaper, and we were in the newspaper every day. I didn't know my picture was in there, so I signed it for her. And she grabbed me by the arm. And it was like a matronly-like woman, and she brings me out to the curb, and she's pointing down the road. She said, "Have you been down here?" And she told me the name of a place and all. She says, "A wonderful place to go and eat and have a beer." I said, "Oh, thank you very much." And the people there, they were so enamored with their country as well. They liked Westerners, they liked Americans, but they wanted to show us that even though they were in Australia, they had Western ideas and they could do things, and they were very proud of their country, which I found really refreshing after touring Europe a couple of times and not having that same response.
Yeah, I totally get that with the Aussies there. They're a passionate, proud bunch of really, I've
absolutely
not met very many Aussies I don't like.
No, they were great. And like I said, it wasn't just the fan, the 20-somethings and 30-somethings. It was, here's this woman. God, she had to be at least 50, Like I said, it reminded me more of a matron, somebody's grandma. And she was just, "Oh yeah, I want your autograph," and she was determined to show me where this place was down the street that I should go and eat. And I just found that really cool, and such a refreshing atmosphere as opposed to some of the places I've been to Europe, which, when you're with the people from that country that work in the industry, they're always blowing smoke up your skirt. But in reality, the pedestrian isn't necessarily as enamored with us as they were, or let us like to believe.
All right. I think that is a very good interview, Mr. John Harte. So
thank you.
You're welcome. Let's just give everyone one more hint of where they can find your pledgemusic.com, Big John Harte, and there are a ton of really cool packages being offered here. Everything from a handwritten thank you note to signed 8x10s of that classic staged photo, through T-shirts, a whole lot of things. Get behind John and support this book. Everyone who is a Kiss fan loves the inside stories. You're not going to get those from people like me. You're going to get them from people like Big John, who was there, who worked with the band directly, went with them all over the world, and worked with some very other interesting artists. Prince, come on, that's just that was very cool, that story just on its own, and the guys from Maiden, of course. But Big John Harte is aiming for the summer at some point to hopefully have this book out. So as
the late summer, we hope to have it all done and putting in them little hands of theirs.
Absolutely. As someone who's published books, I wish you the very best of luck, John, and thank you so much for spending this time with us and telling your stories. And hopefully we can get some people to check out your Pledge Music site and, support the book, support the project so that you can bring it to fruition.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate your time and having me on, and it was great.
All right, John. Well, thanks so much for joining us, and take care, and we'll probably see you somewhere soon.
I hope so. That'll be great. Take care now.
All right. Bye for now.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
That's Big John Harte. Obviously we appreciate him taking the time to talk with us today. And once again, pledgemusic.com, Big John Harte. And there's some cool stuff there. Obviously, it's a work that's very nearly done, and John's given us quite a few of the stories. I didn't want to go into hopefully cover the same ground that every other podcast that's going to be talking with John is going to cover. So hopefully we have something of interest in our interview. But I guess for now, from Ken and myself, thanks for joining us and Big John, and we will see you next time. Thank you for spending time listening to the KissFAQ podcast today. All sales are final. There are no refunds. If you'd like, look us up on Facebook or come over to the KissFAQ message board and discuss the topic we broadcast today. Don't forget to rate us on iTunes, Spreaker, or wherever you've listened to the show. We hope you'll join us again.